week, Syracuse University released a new study showing prosecutions for immigration offenses are on the rise, and those convicted are facing much stiffer prison sentences. Today, the National Immigration Forum held a press conference on Capitol Hill, urging lawmakers to rethink current laws. Are American policies too strict or not strict enough? Joining me now is Stein, Executive Director for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, and Jean Butterfield, Executive Director of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And Jean, I understand you attended the press conference earlier today.
Yes, I did. I moderated it, Catherine.
Tell me about it.
Well, we were there to call on Congress to correct some of the overreaching measures that they enacted in 1996. Some of the laws that they enacted then went too far, we believe, and are unduly penalizing people who have made reforms and deserve a second chance and really belong here in the United States with their U.S. citizen families.
Okay, there are aberrations in any application of law, whether it's against an immigrant or a U.S. citizen, but what are the more common problems that you say are too egregious?
Well, Congress stripped from our laws the ability of the courts to hear immigration cases and to correct abuses that may be made by the INS, and they also removed the discretion of immigration judges from being able to determine if someone deserves a second chance. They made the laws retroactive so that someone who made a very minor mistake 30 years ago and has paid the price and lived an unblemished record ever since is being faced with deportation, and there's no relief.
Dan, you do see a problem. I know one of the cases I was looking at, a woman who was allegedly returning baby clothes, didn't have a receipt. They accused her of shoplifting some $14 worth of clothes. All of a sudden, she's got 2 kids born in this country, and they're talking about deporting her. Does seem a little harsh.
Well, I think you have to look at the reality of what the INS, the Immigration Service, is doing with the laws itself. We think Congress was on the right track. They said, look, the Immigration Service isn't enforcing the law. Criminal aliens aren't being deported promptly. The immigration lawyers love loopholes because loopholes give them an opportunity to get business, file claims, get paying clients. Congress was saying, look, the law is not being enforced. We got 5 million people here illegally. The General Accounting Office, Congress's auditing arm, is saying, look, we're not getting criminal aliens out of the country. They say we're still not doing a good job of getting criminal aliens out of the country. And I'm not aware of a single independent audit or advisory commission or anything else that has said we need to go back to the '96 law and weaken it. In fact, I think most of the American people think we ought to strengthen it, we ought to be doing more to enforce it, and we should stop politicizing the immigration process for the benefit of special interest groups.
Well, to give us an idea of the problem, because again, another article was talking about the number of foreign-born nationals in our prisons. When papers were checked, it was quite extraordinary how many were immigrants that were not, obviously not naturalized citizens, but also many illegal immigrants.
Right. I mean, the percentage of foreign-born in our federal prisons far exceeds their percentage of the population, and this really goes to the relationship between international smuggling, organized crime, and immigration that is sort of a concomitant, or what you expect to have when you have very high immigration. And the Immigration Service, Congress has said this over and over again, is a disaster. Keystone Cops, we got a Model T Immigration Service in a Concord age, hundreds of millions of people who'd like to come to the U.S. We don't have control of our borders, and I think it's really important that we have leadership in this country to identify and define what is going on with the Immigration Service, why criminal aliens and illegal aliens are not being removed.
Catherine, we are a nation of immigrants, and it's not about making the laws more harsh. It's about restoring some compassion to the laws. These are American citizen families, and their breadwinners, their spouses are being ripped apart from them. Their sons are being deported, in the case this morning, to Thailand, where they have not been since they were 1 year old. These are the excesses that Congress enacted, and we need to restore compassion and discretion. We're a nation of just laws. The laws must be enforced, but they must be enforced with compassion and with some discretion to determine who deserves a second chance.
Where's the compassion you're calling for? In other words, obviously, if you've got a violent criminal, I would doubt you would say, put him back with his family, let him stay.
Exactly. I mean, violent criminals need to be locked up. There's no dispute about that. But when you have someone who's committed a mistake, an 18-year-old this morning who had been accused of robbing a car radio, paid restitution, did community service, was released from probation in 6 months early because he was so exemplary, and now 5 years later is being threatened with deportation, has been ordered deported, that's absurd. It's an absurd result. And Congress stripped away the discretion of the courts and the judges to make those very key judgments. Okay. And we need to put that back in the hands of the judges.
Dan, before we break, do you agree that that's an inappropriate result in a case like that?
Well, I think there's a politicization of the Immigration Service identifying cases like this when they're letting the barn door wide open with criminal aliens who ought to be deported walk away. And the question is, why are these particular cases being identified when all the independent auditing arms are saying the INS is not deporting criminal aliens who ought to be deported? And before Congress goes back and weakens the law, before they weaken the law, we've got to find out why the Immigration Service isn't enforcing the law effectively to protect Americans.
I'll tell you what, we will take that up on the other side of the break. A lot more ahead. Don't go away. Continue my conversation on immigration reform with Dan Stein and Gene Butterfield. Gene, the figures we were just seeing on the screen, they've gone up about 130,000 in 5 years in terms of those actually expelled. Any sense at all of what percentage you would object to that you say are being mishandled in some fashion?
Well, I think it's probably a significant percentage. INS is doing a better job of enforcing the laws. They're doing a better job of deporting those who need to be deported, but their discretion has been removed. And I think that Congress needs to fix those excesses and give immigration judges back the authority to weigh the circumstances of a case and to say, yes, this father should not be yanked from his U.S. citizen children and spouse and sent back to a country he's never known if he's committed a crime that's not violent, that he's been rehabilitated, that he shows he's making a contribution to the community. Immigration judges used to have that power. They did not abuse that power, and we need to put it back in their hands.
Dan, there are a lot of problems with judges and prosecutors with the three strikes law, for example, mandatory sentencing, where they're saying our judgment is being abrogated and we're not able to do our job. Sounds similar to the immigration judges. Why was that discretion taken away?
The discretion was taken away because the states were complaining that criminal aliens were being incarcerated at state taxpayer expense, and then when it was time to bring them up for deportation hearings, the INS did not come and get them. The aliens walked out of prison, and many of them committed crimes again. And the political pressure finally built, where it became clear after, as I say, these auditing agencies said, look, criminal aliens are not being deported even if they commit serious, significant felonies, drug-related felonies and related. We've got to do something to take away discretion. We've got to do something to stop the abuse of the process. Immigration lawyers like discretion, like loopholes, like a second chance, because it's more business. It's not about justice. It's about more business. Catherine. It's about reinstating the integrity of the law, which Barbara Jordan, when she chaired a commission before she passed away, said this law has no credibility. Unless we start tightening up the process, we're going to be made a mockery of this, which is not the rule of law. This is a complete joke.
The INS, the Department of Justice, the immigration courts themselves have argued that they need to retain this discretion. There's no way that INS can be told, as Congress did in 1996 changing this law, enforce this in an absolute fashion and don't weigh the consequences and don't weigh the circumstances of each case. That discretion
we would be happy
not abused, and it needs to be restored. Families deserve not to be ripped apart. Violent criminals need to be prosecuted, but those who have rehabilitated and are serving their community and supporting their families need to stay here.
Well, we would be happy to see discretion restored in certain cases if more than 1/2% of the illegal immigrants in this country were apprehended and deported. With 5 million people here, almost no prospect of being identified and deported, no one can possibly say that the immigration enforcement of this country and the laws enforced in this country are too stringent. They are a joke, a mockery, a worldwide circus.
The Syracuse report, Catherine, that you cited earlier exactly makes the opposite point. INS is doing a much better job of enforcing the laws. 92% of the cases referred for federal prosecution are being prosecuted more than drug abusers.
Clarify on that, because you all are talking about two different things. I think the INS not finding illegal immigrants, they're coming in, at the tune of, 250,000, a million every 4 years is on
city,
average.
Basically.
Something like this. So it's not just the cases that are caught and ultimately prosecuted, because many of those are let out on bond. You never see them again. So you're talking about a very small percentage that actually come to a trial.
That's right.
Well, we're talking about an even smaller percentage of those who are guilty of any kind of criminal activity. Most of these are people fleeing devastation of hurricanes in Central America. They're people coming because their family members are here. They're people coming because there's a 4 to 5 year wait to reunite with a spouse at this point. They're coming because naturalization is backlogged 3 and 4 years in this country. Until we clean up that, until we clean up the backlogs, until we are able to provide people with the services and the legal means to remain here that are provided under our law, we're not going to be able to solve that problem. We can do smarter enforcement. We are doing smarter enforcement at the border, but we're not going to put up a Berlin Wall around this country.
Well, we still don't have any good deterrence. Look, in the end, Congress is taking a look at the Immigration Service and saying, this is crazy. We appropriate more money for immigration enforcement. It winds up being used to run naturalization ceremonies around the country. We're getting so fed up, so sick and tired of the politicalization and the political leadership of the Immigration Service. We want to split the agency in half, have an enforcement bureau that's run by people who understand and support immigration enforcement to make it work. They are constructively firing the current Immigration Commissioner, Doris Meisner, because they're so dissatisfied with the way she's enforcing the 96th law.
Well, once again, I think
and you have
exaggerating.
bipartisan support for this proposal, and in major parts of Congress.
There's bipartisan support for real reform, and one of those pieces of reform is to make sure enforcement is done rationally and efficiently and well, and the other half of it is to make sure that services are provided efficiently and humanely and with respect for the consumers
so you support the bill?
Of those services. And so the proposal to divide the Immigration Service is not one that has overwhelming support. The proposal to separate those functions and retain it within one unified agency where there is a chain of command, where there is someone accountable who we can hold accountable, is one that many of us do support.
Well, no, I don't think any American can believe for 1 minute that our Immigration Service is worthy of public support. Our tax dollars are going to pay an Immigration Service that lets millions of illegal immigrants in, is a basic violation of public trust, and doesn't do an effective job. And I think the vast majority of the American people support and know that the Immigration Service is a disaster.
All right, last word today, Dan Stein, Gene Butterfield. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Don't go away.